Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR. I've got a lot to talk about going on in the Big Ten. It is our football episode with the good old Zach Guggenheim here with us once again. The man that would never get a show cause in podcasting. No, he would never do such a thing to earn that, and he would never diminish the good name of the Big Ten Huddle by doing that. So, Zach, credit to you, credit to your ability to not get show causes.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the confidence. We run a squeaky clean program here in the Big Ten Huddle, and unless if DK is on the show, then we might have to put up some warning labels. So
Yeah, he behaved himself okay
yeah, he
on
did. He did.
last Thursday night, but yeah, we do have to have the super chat swear jar for him every now and then. DK says we have shirts. Yes, we do, Dylan.
Yeah, we do.
Go
Yeah, we
go
do.
to the link in the description. There's a link for learn more about the Big Ten Huddle, and you can get shirts there and a cup too. But Zach, I would be remiss if we did not. Oh, I should say really fast. So we joke about the show cause. If you're paying attention, Michigan, two former Michigan coaches got show cause penalties. What was it yesterday,
Hmm.
last night, or something like that? We're not going to talk about it. It just like it's one of those things where I'm just tired of talking about all this stuff, and I know all the Ohio State fans that watch want us to talk about it desperately. All the Michigan fans who watch want to desperately make fun of us for talking about it. So I'm just not going to talk about it because it's a no-win scenario, and we will just talk about everything when it's all said and done. Is that fair, Zach?
Yep. Yeah, we've talked enough about this. I think to produce way too much content, and so let's just wait until it's done. When it's done, we'll talk about it.
Max, I can assure you, correct. No recruiting scandals. I did recruit Zach. I did tamper with Zach when he was still in Big Ten football talk, but I talked with his agent. I didn't talk with him, so it was
Yeah.
okay.
He tampered. I was tampered with, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how to. This is weird. We should move
Tamper tape.
on.
Ryan, thank you so much for the super chat. $20 contribution
Yeah.
means so much to us. We really appreciate it, man. He says, "I hate starting on a Thursday. I'd like the Iowa game at 2:30 and Ohio State at 6:30. Or yeah, OSU at 6:30, Minnesota at 2:30. The Saturday after Thanksgiving." So Ryan is talking about the schedule here, and I believe he's talking about the Wisconsin Minnesota game that happens on Thanksgiving Day. There. Yeah, I mean, like the NFL does that weird scheduling where they like go on Thursday and I think they have games on Friday too and
Mhm.
stuff like that. I would rather college football just stay away from Thursday because it already seems so dominated by uh by the NFL that like why even try? I'm with you, Ryan. Like just schedule your games accordingly on that day or on that Saturday. Maybe you can do a few little special things here and there, but I mean the TV people have to hate it, don't you think, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, I can understand week one because the NFL is not playing then, but it does. I do feel like, especially later in the season, it gets annoying to try to figure out how to get. On one hand, I like that there's so much football. On another hand, I'm like, I just wish it was all on Saturday.
Yeah, totally. And the other thing too is like the NFL schedules things out so that way people can be on Thursday night and it's not a big deal. Like you don't get that the last week of the season. Like you don't get a bye before the last week. I mean, some teams get a bye. Indiana has a bye the last week before the last week of the season, which is stupid. Like nobody wants their bye right before the last game of the season. But but yeah, Wisconsin and Minnesota, they don't have that. So yeah, I'm right there with you, Ryan. I can't stand it. That's stupid.
Hmm.
But I think we know who will be the big noon kickoff on the last game of the year, right, Zach?
Yeah, it'll probably be Purdue, Indiana.
Yeah, yeah. They're gonna switch it up. They'll go away
Yeah.
from all the viewers that Ohio State Michigan gets.
Never know. CBS might be like, hey, it's Brad Nestler's last year, or Gary Danielson's last year. We got to get Ohio State, Michigan for them, and yeah,
Maybe
Purdue,
they did
Indiana.
move it up to 3:30 that one time because of because it was a 1-2 matchup and everything. So
Yeah.
but they didn't move it up when it was a 2-3 matchup. So 2-3 not nearly as important as 1-2. So
Yeah.
all right, Zach, we've got a lot of people in here. John is complaining about the final 25 seconds of the game. John, I wish I could sympathize with you, but blocked out in my area. Apparently in Indiana, you can't watch the Indiana Pacers. Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought?
If I didn't have a hat on, I would have face palmed there. That's insane. It's so dumb.
Pat McAfee couldn't even watch it. He literally got blocked out too. So I don't know. Pat McAfee's got connections, so I'm sure he's fine. But yeah,
I said there's no way that he didn't watch that game.
Blue Wolverine says, "Ladies and gentlemen, Blue Wolverine, thank you for being here. We appreciate it." And Dylan has found the thick sizes. Good, Dylan. We made sure those were there just for you. Zach's turning red. If you're listening on podcast form. So
I'm just gonna say, I think it makes me both excited and a little nervous when I actually drive through Ohio and meet people in person. Like, so if you were listening to the NFL draft live show, we're hoping to go through Indiana at some point. I'm like, I could actually meet JR face to face and might also get to connect with DK and Eric, and maybe I can hand deliver the thick size to.
There you go.
There we go.
There you go. The thick size. There we go.
Yeah.
Zach just out here handing out thick sizes to everybody. Okay. John says Tyrese Halliburton game winner in the last second of the game was down 7 with like 30 seconds left and one. Wow.
Dang.
That's crazy. That is crazy. Yeah, I wish I would have saw it. But I didn't, because blocked out. This is why I don't really like the NBA and why I can't really get into the NBA. So, yeah. All right, Zach, we're 7 minutes in. We should probably get started with the show. What do you think?
Yeah, we should probably do that.
All right, let's begin with the Indiana Hoosiers. Zach, they add Kellan, Wyatt, and the Maryland transfer Kellan, Wyatt, and the Kent State transfer Stephen Daley. I think it might be Stephan. I apologize if I misspelled that. But Zach, to me, these are two pretty huge additions for Indiana. I knew they needed an edge, and so Kellan Wyatt was a good one to go after there. We did not talk. This is like a week old. We didn't talk about it, but I need to make sure we did talk about it. So I just went ahead and put it on the schedule for this one. And then some people are kind of underrating Stephen Daley a little bit, but Stephen Daley was at Kent State actually with CJ West, who was just a 4th round draft pick in the NFL. So, I mean, just because they're from Kent State, as Zach knows, just because they're from Kent State doesn't mean they can't play in the NFL. Two huge additions in my mind. I'll read their stats from this past year really fast, and then I'll turn it over to Zach. Kellan Wyatt had 30 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks and 2 forced fumbles in 11 games last year, while Stephan Daley had 51 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 3 pass deflections, 1 forced fumble, and 1 fumble recovery. Good statistics from these two players, Zach. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think, first of all, getting more depth at the defensive line is always a win, especially when you are a team like Indiana, who, while they have done a good job of building that roster, they still need depth. Like that, I think, is what was one of the things that killed them as they got late into the season. Obviously, they need elite talent to compete with elite teams. Like that's, I think, another big thing. But to get depth, and these are good players, right? Like Stephen Daley, who's underrated, 3-star prospect in the transfer portal, good stats. Again, we can make fun of him all we want from being from Kent State, but this is a good player. And having him come in, having a replacement for CJ West and Kellan Wyatt, both underrated players, I think. And I think this bodes well. Again, Curt Cignetti knows how he wants to build his team, right? We joked last year that they were the group of 5 all-stars. They're elevating, right? They got Mendoza. That's not a group of 5 all-star. That is a potential
Are we sure the
all
ACC
Big Ten player.
Isn't group of 5?
That you stop that. I know we like to give stuff to the ACC. Save it for the SEC stinks segment.
Okay, that's coming up. Don't worry. That's coming up.
But in all seriousness, like they've elevated, and yet they're still sticking to their roots of getting and cherry picking some of the best group of 5 players to build their roster. I think it's great.
I agree. I want to know how long this is going to be sustainable, right? How long is Kirkson-Eddy going to continue to be able to go out and get guys who have 1 or 2 years of eligibility left and bring them in? Obviously, he's done it this year. It's probably going to happen again, or it happened last year. These guys are probably going to work out similarly, if not the same, as last year, this year. So I'm confident in that. But as far as I'm concerned, like as long as Signetti is recruiting, so that way he doesn't have to do this all the time, like that's a win. And from everything it looks like he is. I mean, we haven't talked a ton about Indiana recruiting, but they just went on a tear of getting like 3 or 4 guys in a row this
Yep.
past week. So they're doing just fine there. But as far as I'm concerned, like this is the kind of stuff you need to happen in order to turn a bottom dweller school into one of the best schools in the conference. And when I say
Yep.
one of the best schools in the conference, I mean top 5, top 6. And right now, with everything Indiana's doing, I don't see a reason to believe they're not going to be a top 5, top 6 team in this conference. You know,
Yep.
their record's going to be a little bit worse than it was last year just because the schedule isn't the same. They have tougher teams to play throughout, but this team could be just as good talent-wise and with who they were, maybe even better than they were last year, especially with these additions. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. The thing with that too, the sustainability piece, you have to remember that he came in with a plan to start with the transfer portal. That I think the goal is shifted over time. And you're already seeing that. You alluded to this, but their recruiting is starting to take shape. And so they didn't have a top 25 class, but it was in the top 40. And currently they're in the top 40 and they're not I think they will finish better this year than they did a year ago with the way that he's been able to recruit so far. So I think that is the key though, is can he get not homegrown talent, just start to be seen as a developer of talent and not just a cherry picker.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm looking up the commitments really fast. So in the 2026 class, I mean, Indiana already has 2 4 stars committed. They have an athlete and Henry Olinger, 6'1", 210. I mean, he's a linebacker from Columbus, Ohio. Went to Columbus, Ohio, got a 4-star prospect out of Grandview Heights. Like that's
Mhm.
amazing. Now, I follow Ohio State recruiting pretty close. This guy's never really been mentioned, so I don't think Ohio State was after him. But the same thing happened with Victor Singleton when he went to Illinois, and we gave Illinois a ton of praise for that one.
Yep.
Linebacker, running back, John says. So thank you, John. So like we're gonna give them a ton of praise here too. I think Victor Singleton was a higher rated player, but that doesn't take anything away from Henry Olinger and what he can be. Because let's be honest, like Indiana wasn't recruiting like this before. Tom Allen got a few good guys here and there, but Indiana wasn't doing this before.
Yep.
Casimir Hicks, 2026 guy out of Indianapolis, Indiana. I mean, Indiana has more talent than I think some people give them credit for. Ohio
Yep.
State has dipped into Indiana and got some talent before. Guess where they're not going right now for talent as much? Indiana, because Ohio State sees that the talent in Indiana is not leaving the state as much, with Indiana recruiting well and Notre Dame recruiting well too.
Mhm.
So they're just not doing it right now. Ohio State's kind of cherry picking from New Jersey, which stinks for Rutgers, but you know
Yep.
that's what Ohio State has tried to do. So, but I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you go over to states that are next to you that have good 4-star talent, cherry pick those guys. You come into your own state, number 1 player in the state of Indiana, Casimir Hicks. Get him, lock him in. He's your guy. I love it. Kirk
Yep.
Cinetti is doing great. I just wish Kirk Cinetti was younger so we could see it for longer. I have no idea how long this is gonna last.
Yep.
So
Hey, Nick Saban went till he was in his 70s. So
that's true. That's true. Maybe Kirk Cinetti does the same thing. I hope he does. I want Kirk Cinetti around as long as possible at this point. So.
mhm.
All right, Zach, let's get on to actually Indiana's involved in this one a little bit too. We're going to focus mostly on Penn State, but Indiana's involved here too. Penn State is pursuing Rutgers transfer linebacker Mohamed Toure and North Carolina transfer linebacker slash edge Amare Campbell. Indiana is also pursuing Mohamed Toure. I think they have a visit set up later. Actually, I literally put a note in here like I need to check before we start talking about Toure if he's committed yet, because the guy I read, I think he was 24/7, he said that he said that Toure could literally commit anytime today if the visit
Mm.
goes well. So I'm gonna make sure I have that pulled up to look at it. But Zach, we knew Penn State wanted to go after a linebacker. James Franklin said it after the spring game with Robinson, I believe it is. He
Yep.
moved on and he's at USC now. So we knew they were going to at least go after one. They're going after two here, and honestly, I think they take both if they get the opportunity with Mohamed Toure and his injury history. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, it's a bummer that Toure didn't stay at Rutgers, first of all. And I understand it, right? He wanted a little bit more money for NIL. At least that's what it seems like. And I think Rutgers, understandably so, is concerned with the two ACL injuries. And so you hope it works out for both. I hope Toure gets picked up by Penn State or by someone and he plays. If he is back to where he was, I think he's a fantastic pickup for Penn State because he brings experience. He's an All Big Ten selection, former All Big Ten. I think if he doesn't start, he's at least in the rotation. And Campbell's also really good. I think he is I think both these linebackers would get playing time. I think they both give experience, which again, you look at the Michigan and Ohio State blueprint for Penn State to win a national championship. It's experience at every level. And that's what Penn State needs to keep building is experience and talent at every level of the offense and defense. So you don't turn these guys down because they're both talented and they have a ton of experience.
Real quick, HWF3 says, did you see Andy Staples' preseason top 25? Had a top 10 Illinois, Nebraska, and Iowa were on it as well, but left out the Hoosiers. What a joke. It's actually what we're going to talk about next. So we're going to hit a commercial break here in a second, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it. So don't you worry, HWF3. It will be discussed. Yeah, no, I'm totally with you, Zach. I think with Toure and his injury history, you can't bring him in and just rely on him as a depth piece because you don't know what's going to happen, unfortunately. And I don't like to say that about Toure. I really like Toure, and I thought he was going to be a really good player. I think he was a Butkus watch list player last year before the injury happened in fall camp. And so, I mean, that sucks for him. But as far as I'm concerned, like you could have one of the best linebackers in the Big Ten on your bench just sitting there waiting in the depths. It's just about if he can stay healthy and do that. Now, I think James Franklin would be aware of that kind of stuff, and he probably knows he doesn't need to run Toure super hard in practice and develop him like he would a freshman or anything like that, because Toure is a pretty made product. I mean, this is his seventh year in college football. Seventh year. He's got a red shirt. He is what we call a red shirt senior plus in college football. You're gonna start seeing that on like roster sites now. And in the meantime, you have a guy like Kellan Wyatt and Stephen Daley, who they're both in their fourth year, and they only have 1 year of eligibility left too. Now, obviously, injuries could happen, and they can get another one. But as far as I'm concerned, if Penn State can land Toure, it's huge for them. As long as he stays, healthy and everything like that. It sounds like Florida State, Miami, and Syracuse are involved in this as well. But the one that I would really, really want, and this is just me because I think that he's a fantastic blitzer and would do a great job getting to the quarterback. I think I want Amir Campbell to be the focus here, the guy that more NIL is going to and stuff like that, because this guy has shown an ability to get to the quarterback.
Yeah.
Now it is at the ACC level, so a little group of five-ish, but
wow.
Well, but still, like he's shown an ability. 1.5 sacks against NC State. Just an animal. Really, really good player. Watched a little bit of tape on him before we came on here, and really liked what I saw. He's just a really good pass rusher and does a great job.
To that point, that's precisely what they did with the loss of Abdul Carter. I know Abdul Carter was an edge. He had transitioned from linebacker to edge, but you've got to replace that pass rush somehow. And I think that is a key thing for them. So I agree. I think Campbell, the priority, but if you can get Toure, you get him too.
You think Indiana needs to go hard after Toure, or I don't think Indiana needs Toure. I think Toure is a nice piece if they get him, but I don't think Indiana needs Toure bad.
No, but if you can get him, you take him.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Leadership, experience, all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I'm rooting for Penn State or Indiana here. I do not want Miami to get him at all. I hope we
Yeah.
have another Miami fan in the chat so they can tell us that we're Miami haters because we are.
Wait, did someone tell us that we were Miami? Like, did
Yeah,
someone
like last
call us
episode,
out?
wasn't there somebody in the chat that was like, "Wow, you
Oh,
guys hate Miami," and I was like,
oh yeah,
"Yes, we do."
yeah, oh yeah. Yeah. I don't hate Miami. I don't like their fan. I don't like that the fans think that they're still like amazing when it's like very clearly you guys haven't been good since 2002,
Yeah.
right? Okay, John Jacobs, why you come in first time you're
Well,
here in a while,
they
and
don't
now
have
you got to
Stephen
give me this Kent State stuff. Come on, man.
they don't have Stephen Daley anymore.
That's
So
true. That's true. No wins for Kent State. We love you, John Jacobs. We're glad you're back.
I was just about ready to bring up John when he said 11-1 Indiana and say he's back. So thanks for being here, John Jacobs. We appreciate you coming back. Um, let's see. He's asking if Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland is better. I mean, I would take either one. We talked about it on the draft show. I mean,
Yeah.
I think Tyler Warren had a little bit more inflated production because of his role in the offense, but I also think a guy being able to carry that type of role in the offense says a lot about him. I think Colston Loveland's had, worse production because of the quarterback that he had, and also he didn't play the entire season.
Yep.
But I also think it says something about him that he was able to have production even with that player. So if I had to choose, I'm probably choosing. I mean, that's nearly impossible. I mean, for what I want. If I want a pass catcher, I'm taking Loveland. If I want an all-around blocker and somebody that can catch as well, I'm probably taking Warren. What do you think? You agree with
Yeah.
that?
I slightly favor Loveland over Warren. Slightly. For overall player. But
Gotcha.
I think it's hard to tell, and I think you just hit on it. It's hard to tell how much of Warren's production is because he was that dominant or because it was schemed open by Kotelnicki.
Yeah, and that's the hard part, right? It's like
Yeah.
you don't know. So
Yeah.
I am refreshing the feed here on Twitter just to make sure I don't miss a commitment or anything like that. Iowa just landed a commitment of a Purdue DB, Ty Hudkins. So congratulations to Iowa there. We're going to hit a break really quick and we'll come back. We'll talk about Andy Staples' top 25. Some good news for the Big Ten, but also some questionable decision making. We'll get to it all. We'll be right back. Have you ever wanted to watch all 22 film, that film the coaches watch? Well, now you can. Introducing the Coaches Film Room. Over at Minutes to Sports, former college coach Zach Smith breaks down film of the most relevant teams in college football with a bit of a Big Ten lead. It's not free, so you'll need to sign up for the Colonel tier, which is $25 a month, but I can attest to you that it is far more worth it than that. With about 4 to 8 games per week, this is worth so much more money, not to mention Zach's analysis, making you a smarter football fan. Go check it out. The links are in the description, minutestosports.com. You won't be sorry. Back here on the Big Ten Huddle, we appreciate you being with us. We are taking a look at Andy Staples' top 25. Like I said, some good news for the Big Ten, some not so good news as well. I guess I shouldn't say it's news. It's just Andy's opinion, but I think it solidifies some of the stuff that we've been saying about Indiana and the national perception of them. That wasn't necessarily our perception, but just knowing college football and the way that people work, like Indiana is going to be a fringe top 25 team this year.
Yep.
It's not fair. It's not right. It's not like they've proven themselves, in my opinion, but there are so many people out there who are pro SEC and that were mad that the SEC didn't get Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina, and that they're going to do whatever they can to try and drop Indiana. Although Indiana was better than all those teams and proved it, you still have Alabama, South Carolina, and Ole Miss in this top 25. But Indiana is nowhere to be found. Zach, let's start there, and then we'll get into Illinois. top 10. What are your thoughts on no Indiana in the top 25?
So I know that people think that I'm the Indiana hater on this show. Um, and you're going to continue to think I'm an Indiana hater on this show. I think they should be in the top 25. I think they should certainly be in over Iowa. I think there's several other teams that they should be in over. But I can understand the hesitancy because, a year ago, a lot of and we've said it on this show, their record was inflated by a very weak schedule. And they had really three marquee games against Michigan, who it was the worst Michigan team we've seen in several years. Ohio State, who they got beat by multiple touchdowns, and Notre Dame, who they got beat by multiple touchdowns. And they really struggled against Michigan. They won, but they struggled against Michigan. So I can understand the skepticism. Is it necessarily fair? No, but I can understand. I think that the skepticism is understandable. And I would compare that to Illinois, where Illinois finished the season with a win over a team that a lot of people had a high perception of in South Carolina. Again, fair or not, I feel like it helps me understand why Illinois and Indiana are where they are. I think another thought, like if you look, so I was ready to come on here and rip him for Auburn, especially Auburn over Indiana. Here's the problem. If you compare Indiana's transfer portal, which was great, and recruiting, which I thought was great for Indiana, and you compare it to Auburn, Auburn smokes them. Like it's not even close. So again, a top 25 for next year, which I hate rankings because I think it's stupid. I think we should save rankings until the top, October. But if you're thinking of where do I think this team is going to be next year, you look at Indiana's schedule, which is harder. You look at some of the recruiting rankings and the transfer portal rankings. I can understand it. I'd still have them above. I'd have them in the 20s or like teens, but I can understand why he doesn't have them there.
So my thing with the transfer portal rankings is I don't think they're indicative of a better team at all. I don't know, maybe that's a hot take, but here are the teams that were top 10 in transfer portal rankings last year. Half of them good, but I think we expected them to be good. Half of them not. Ole Miss. Ole Miss had 26 guys come in through the transfer portal. They were the number one team according to 24/7. They were good last year, 9-3. Obviously, that's a good season for them. But I still think they underachieved because people thought they were going to be a top 5, top 10 team, and they ended up being top 15. So I think they underachieved. Oregon was second. Oregon was the number one team in the nation until they lost to Ohio State. So I think Oregon, yes, they achieved what they were supposed to do. Alabama was way worse than people thought.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that they lost to Oklahoma, they lost to Michigan in the bowl game. I don't think that's indicative at all. Texas A&M, they looked okay there for a little bit, but they also had a really easy schedule. And then once they started playing harder teams, they lost. Texas, they were good, and then we start getting into some of the bad teams. Florida State, Colorado, Miami was good, but all I'm saying is there are teams in this top 10 here that did well in transfer portal that either underachieved or didn't do well. So I don't think transfer portal rankings are solely indicative of this team's going to be a much better team than they were last year. So I'm looking at Florida at 10 and Auburn at 13 and saying there is no reason why Indiana shouldn't be ahead of those teams. You just look at the history of the transfer portal. You look at how these teams turn over talent and everything. It doesn't typically work for teams. And it's not like we're talking about Indiana being a terrible transfer portal team on 24/7. They're 21st in the rankings, right behind Alabama. So I get they're not a top 10 team, but I don't see a reason why Florida and Auburn should be above Indiana. So however you want to rank those teams, if those teams are not even ranked and you want to put Indiana 25, sure, I'll take that. If you want to say those teams are 20 and 15, I think Indiana should be at least 14th then. Because as far as I'm concerned, Kirk Cinetti has shown that he is an actual coach who can actually coach his team up and play well in the conference, as opposed to Billy Napier and Hugh Freeze, where Billy Napier got a quarterback to save his job because he was fired last year if it wasn't for holding on to DJ Lagway, and Hugh Freeze cheated his butt off at Tennessee or wherever he was. Was it Tennessee? Or Ole Miss?
Ole Miss. Ole Miss.
He cheated like crazy at Ole Miss and then flamed out, and now he's at Auburn, and every single year people are like, this Auburn team's going to be good, and it's like, once they show it, sure.
Yeah, and if I could push back, because it's not just transfer portal rankings that I'm looking at, it's recruiting rankings, right? Auburn had the 19th ranked class in 2023, 8th, this is 247, by the way, 8th best class in 2024, 6th best this past year. Like, they're working on much better classes than Indiana is. Now, is that an indicator of future success? Sometimes. There have been teams that have completely flamed out. I think Florida is similar. I just think this is the issue that I think Indiana is running into, is at some point, Indiana has to stack successes. And I'm not saying that that's fair. I'm saying that to change perception. And while they had a great season a year ago, they didn't have marquee wins. And I think that's the problem. So I think actually if they go 8-4 or 9-3 this year with a marquee win, that goes a far, far better than even this past year for their national credibility. I think they should be ranked. I don't know if I would agree that they should be definitively above like Auburn and Florida. I don't know, because I think past success should matter, but I also think last year shouldn't matter. Like, I feel like last year shouldn't matter in regards to this year. Like, it's a completely new slate.
I think the coaching matters. Like, I think you talk about the coaching and stuff like that. I think that matters. I don't think that the team and the way they played, like, Kurzwork ain't coming back to Indiana. So,
right.
Like, I'm not trying to say that. I look at this Auburn team, and I'm with you, recruiting rankings, but they also had 26 players leave and go to the transfer portal.
Yeah.
So for me, like, when I see that, I look at a team that just had, all these good recruiting rankings, and it's like, okay, how much of that talent stayed? How much of that talent left and got paid? How much of that talent stayed, got paid, and is fat and happy and doesn't want to do anything and work to get better? You know, like, one of the things that people don't talk about with the SEC is the SEC has some of the teams that waste talent the most in college football. Everybody wants to talk about how much talent the SEC gets, but people don't want to talk about how much teams waste that talent as well. You know how, like, we just looked at the number of players drafted by SEC teams. There's a reason why the Big Ten is gaining on them. Is because the Big Ten is getting players, developing them, and turning them into much better players nowadays than they were before. So I hear you. I think you make good points. I'm not trying to say that I completely disagree with what you're saying. I just look at teams like Florida and Auburn. Yes, they had a couple better wins. At least Florida did. I know. I don't remember who Auburn beat that was good. I know they lost to Cal last year. So
they didn't.
But even though Indiana didn't have a big marquee win, I still saw consistency on the field all season long. In the one game where they struggled and were not consistent at all, they still won that game against Michigan. And I stick by what I said about Indiana against Ohio State. Indiana played well in that game outside of the offensive line and Curtis Work, basically dying in the backfield every other play. Like, they played well. They did. Outrushed Ohio State. Like, so, I mean, you can only do so much when your special teams is giving up punts for touchdowns and your offensive line is a bunch of swinging doors, other than your left tackle. I mean, that was pretty much the only one that did a good job. So, all right, we don't need to turn it into an entire Indiana segment. Illinois, top 10. I love this. I think Andy Staples is right on. I think I read what he had to say about putting Illinois top 10. Gave a lot of credit to Brett Bielema, which is huge. Gave a lot of credit to Luke Altmaier and his growth as a quarterback, which is huge. I think that, Andy Staples, there's a few things. I read pretty much every team, and there's a few things about some teams here and there that I didn't necessarily agree with, but Illinois, top 10, I agree with it, and I think it's a great ranking.
Yeah, I concur. I think I think it's smart to put them at 9, above Florida, above South. They better be above South Carolina after the win they had. This team is a legit playoff contender.
Oh yeah,
Like, and people need to figure that out. Like Luke Altmaier is a legit quarterback. You know, we talked about it on our NFL, like our show on Sunday. Like, it's not likely that Luke Altmaier becomes a first round draft pick, but he certainly could play himself into that because I think he does have the talent. Like, I think he has the mobility. I think he has the arm strength. If anything, he is a gamer, and I appreciate that about them. Their entire team's coming back. They restocked their defensive line, and that depth is going to work wonders. And they have a marquee game right off the bat against Indiana, which again, that game is that game's going to solidify both teams, I think, which is good.
John Jacobs said Illinois are pretenders. This is the thing I love about it is these two teams are playing each other week 4. I mean, first game of the conference for both of them. So
yeah,
I love it. Maybe they are pretenders. Who knows? If they are, we'll figure it out week 4.
Yeah.
Maybe Indiana's pretenders. If they are, we'll figure. I guess they can't say they're pretenders. They're not even in the top 25. So
yeah, this is not a marquee game. Duke's group of 5. Come on, guys.
It is at Duke. So I do think, they need to not just completely look over that one. Duke did beat Clemson 2 years ago in the season opener at home.
Yeah, that's fair.
But this is Manny Diaz. This isn't Mike Elko. And Manny Diaz is good, don't get me wrong, but it's also year 2 for him, and I don't know how it's going to work out. So good quarterback. Darian Mensah, I think is his name at Duke. Good quarterback. So Illinois secondary should be tested. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Nebraska, offseason champs. Once again, 8 years running, I think.
Yeah.
Congratulations to Nebraska again. And Iowa, 25th. We'll get to the top 3 here in just a second. Any thoughts on Nebraska, 22nd, and Iowa, 25th here, Zach?
If I'm being honest, I think it would be better for both these teams to start the season unranked. Like, let them prove it.
Yeah.
Like, I do think Nebraska is going to be better this year. If you probably have about 5 years worth of clips of me saying that every year.
Say me too.
Yeah. So
this is a year where I'm saying no more. I am just letting Nebraska be Nebraska.
Yeah.
I'm
not just
expecting anything.
And this is where I would say, like, Indiana deserves to be above them, because remember who beat who 56-7? Like, I know last year doesn't matter, but I'm like, what's changed about Nebraska versus what's changed about Indiana? And I'm like, I don't know if there's a 49-point difference.
I will say, I see a ton of people saying, like, Nebraska doesn't deserve to be 22nd. Dylan Raiola sucked last year and everything. Dylan Raiola was a true freshman. Like,
yeah, there's got to be some grace there.
Like, he's gonna grow. He's gonna get better. It's the same thing we're saying about Bryce Underwood this year at Michigan. Which, by the way, Michigan number 17. We can talk about that if you want. But it's like this is what happens when you start a true freshman. Like, DJ Lagway looked really good. Guess what? DJ Lagway only played like half the season. Like. If you would have only seen Dylan Raiola in the first half of the season, you'd have thought he was really good the entire time too. But DJ Lagway only played half the season, and that's hard for defenses to prepare when they don't know if the guy's coming in or not, and that works for him. So, I like Nebraska at 22. I like the head nod to him. Iowa. I wish Minnesota was in there too. I think I'd probably take Minnesota over Louisville. Over Iowa State. I'd probably have Minnesota ahead of those two. I'd probably have it be like Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa.
Even with the quarterback stuff and with all their losses on defense and
I mean, some of it's also just the consistency of PJ Fleck though. Like, this happens almost every offseason. Every offseason we're seeing staff changes and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
that's
You want to
fair.
read that?
Well, I was just saying, Connor makes a good point, and I did gloss over this a little bit. What about all the returning stars at Indiana? I feel like that was
Yeah,
passed over.
D'Angelo Pons, Mikael Kamara,
Yeah,
Aiden Fisher, Elijah Surratt. I'm excited to see what EJ Williams is.
yeah,
He came back. I didn't think he'd come back.
yeah.
We were excited for Tyler Morris and seeing what he could be. Unfortunately, he won't play this season because of his season and Indian injury. But I want to see if Kirk Cinetti can turn EJ Williams into something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
All right. One thing, like I said, I think Indiana should be top 20 or in the teens. I'll tell you. So Nebraska, I'm giving a little junk to, but I can see why they're there. I can see why Iowa is there. You know who I can't understand is Tennessee. They lost their quarterback. Joey Aguilar
they
is
have a 5-star left tackle. Zach, did you not hear about that?
I don't care. I really don't care. Who is he going to protect?
Joey Aguilar.
Joey Aguilar, who's been there for like 30 seconds.
I saw somebody call him a Heisman dark horse the other day, Zach. I want people to know
because he knows
SEC,
like 3 plays.
SEC bias doesn't exist, but Joey Aguilar, who was, bottom half of the Big Ten and quarterback rankings for everybody going into the season, is now a Heisman dark watch, or is a now
dark
Heisman
horse,
dark horse, not dark watch. Is it now a Heisman dark horse contender because he's on Tennessee? Woohoo!
Like they lost their best edge rusher. They lost their best running back. Their receiver room's not great. They have a quarterback who they're probably going to start who's been there for like 2 weeks and is not going to know the offense. Like, what are we doing? That's my biggest critique of this whole list.
Yeah, Philip says does Aguilar get benched mid-season? More likely. I mean, if they start 3-3, yeah.
No. Yeah.
If they, what was it? Urban Meyer said like.
You're screwed.
If you start 3-3, it's not going to help Josh Heupel if he goes in the middle of the field and says, "But aren't you proud of us that we moved on from Nico?" Like,
yeah.
No, big games.
Yeah.
All right, last thing, and then we'll get into our SEC slander. Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, 4, 5, 6. Just wrote an article on Scarlet and Game, which, by the way, if you don't know, I now write for Writing Illini as well. So if you guys like Illinois coverage, go on over to Writing Illini. I'm going to try to put out an article at least once every other day, so you guys can catch my work over there. My name is JR on the show. My real name is John Rhodes. So if you see an article by John Rhodes over there, there's also a link in the description for my articles if you want to check those out for Writing Illini. But I also write for Scarlet and Game, and I wrote about Penn State over Ohio State. Listen. I think Penn State's up there as a favorite for Ohio State. I've said on the last episode. I think Ohio State should be the favorite going into the next season. I think Texas should be up there, and I think that Penn State should be up there as well. I don't have a problem with Notre Dame or Clemson either. I think Clemson, I want to see Dabo do it after his run with Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. I just don't know if Cade Klubnik's that guy, but we'll see. I could be wrong, but I think with Ryan Day beating James Franklin all these times, like I know we talk about how past years don't really matter all that much, but I do think the coaching does. And I think Ryan Day has consistently outcoached James Franklin. And for me, we saw what happened when Penn State was ranked above Ohio State in the playoffs last year. Who made it to the national championship game? Ohio State. Who beat the team that Penn State couldn't beat in the playoffs? Ohio State. So I don't know. I wouldn't so much have a problem with it if Penn State was like 2 or 3 spots ahead, but them right next to each other back to back like that, I think you got to give the nod to Ohio State over Penn State. Even in a year where Penn State returns so much and Ohio State has a lot of new stuff.
Yeah. I actually have no problem with Penn State 1 spot above Ohio State. I have a whole lot of problem with Notre Dame and Clemson both being ahead of them.
Yeah, I mean, like I can see like the returning production piece, and
but
I can see like.
Here's the thing:
Notre Dame did have to replace Golden, didn't they?
Yeah, well, and if you're going to go with the returning production, and you're going to put Notre Dame over Penn State, that's a really bad argument.
That's true.
Like Penn State has, I think, the best returning. Like they have for anyone with a returning production argument, it's Penn State and maybe Clemson. Honestly, like Texas doesn't have it. Notre Dame doesn't have it. Ohio State certainly doesn't have it. Penn State does. And if your argument for Notre Dame over Ohio State is returning production, they have no business being above Penn State.
Yeah. Yeah, it lacks consistency.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
So I would shuffle it. I think it's Texas and either Penn State or Ohio State, and then Notre Dame, Clemson. I think there's a big drop though after the top 5. Because I think Oregon's going to struggle more than people realize with all their losses.
Yeah, that secondary is just really young. Super talented. Super
Yeah,
talented. Could be one of the most talented secondaries in the country. It's just so young.
Yeah, so young. And then I think a lot of people are assuming that DeCorian Moore is the next Jeremiah Smith. He's not. He's not.
Yeah.
Like that receiving core is good. But yeah, Max Ellis is like Oregon lost so much.
Yeah.
And unlike Ohio State, who I think they have a roster that can replenish over time, I think Oregon can too, but I think it's going to take longer.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I still would put Ohio State 1, Texas 2, probably Penn State 3. I don't know, maybe Notre Dame 4.
Yeah.
We'll have to put together a top 25 together and do a video on it.
I think that's fair. I think any combination of those 4 is right. I don't think Clemson's top 5. Or I think Clemson's 5th.
Yeah.
That'd be my
AJ says he essentially questions Staples' credibility with leaving IU off. Yeah, I agree, AJ. I mean, I still think I don't know if I'd go as far as like questioning his credibility. He's been doing it for a long time, and I do think that like longevity and stuff like that, but he's definitely either missing something or just purposely trying to, go against Indiana for some reason. I don't know really why you would do that, but it is weird.
Well, I think top 25 lists are hard in general. And so I'm just going to push back a little bit cuz like I agree. I don't think I think it's an oversight for sure. But I think we just need to remember it's hard to get the top 25 right. And like we're even talking about it here. Where should Penn State, Ohio State be? You and I have very different, like even though we mostly agree, we have different pathways of getting there. That's the problem with rankings.
Right.
So
yeah.
I think we gotta give Andy Staples some grace here. He's a really good writer.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about another piece of his work here where he talks about could the SEC start playing 9 conference games? Andy Staples put out a piece about the SEC and the possibility of them going to 9 conference games. Well, Zach, I think they're kind of like holding college football hostage here because the way Andy Staples puts it, it's like, if you give us automatic bids, we will go to 9. We will give you what you've been dreaming of, what you've been wanting all this time. We will give you 9 conference games for the SEC. It's just such a smug way. And to me, it validates the thought that I had that like all of this auto bid stuff, it's not really the Big Ten all that much. Like, yes, the Big Ten wants it, but the Big Ten is not vying for this stuff as much as the SEC is. Because at the end of the day, the Big Ten got 4 teams in last year completely out of merit and what the teams did that season. And even if you want to say Indiana didn't deserve to be in there, they weren't the last team in. SMU was the last team in. So if you were going to put Alabama or Ole Miss or South Carolina in over them, you had SMU getting knocked out before one of them. So, but it's just such a smug way of looking at it. It's typical SEC. Give us what we want, and we'll go to 9 games and all this stuff and everything. If I'm the Big 12 and the ACC, I'm not budging. I don't think 9 games really means that much to me, but apparently the end of next month is when the SEC meets and decides if they're going to go to 8 or 9 games for the conference in 2026. And a lot of that will depend on if they get automatic bids in 2026 or not. Zach, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean the SEC for the first time realizes they're playing a little bit from behind. And so they're trying to protect themselves. And on one hand, I don't think it's a bad thing to say, hey, we need to protect our interests. But I think it's so obvious to, I think, the watching world that they are nervous about their standing in college football for the first time. And they're losing influence where they had it in spades for 20 to 25 years, right? It was just assumed that one of the two best teams or both of the best teams in college football was down in the Southeastern Conference. And I think even your most ardent Big Ten fans understood that, right? You go back to, early 2010s, late 2000, the aughts, those were dominant. It was a dominant SEC run, and you can't ignore that. And now you're without Nick Saban. Again, a coaching dearth. And yes, they still have probably more of the talent, but they are not who they used to be. And now
Not by,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, not by any means. I mean, I was just listening to a show. I think it was Minister Sports. I have to give proper credit. I'm almost positive it was them. They were going through and looking at the SEC and their dominant run and just how many like draft picks and stuff like that they had, because they were, marveling a little bit at Ohio State getting 4 first-round draft picks. I forget what year they said it was. I think it was 2017. Alabama one year on their national championship team had 27 first-round draft picks on their team. When you look at the future drafts, obviously they were not playing that year, but like freshmen to seniors, there were 27 first-round picks. It absolutely insane. That's why the SEC was so dominant, because you had teams like Alabama, Georgia was starting to get to that place. LSU was in that place in 2019, where it didn't matter who the coach was. You could have had a snail as the coach, and they would have won the national championship in 2018 with how much talent LSU had. Like, you just look at all this talent they had. It is exactly right that NIL and the transfer portal have completely gotten rid of the SEC's dominance when it comes to that stuff. And that's why I made the point earlier about Auburn, Zach, is that yes, they've recruited really well, but they're losing a ton of players. And so even if they have really good players starting, they don't have the depth. And that's what Big Ten teams do have, because you see coaches like Kirk Cinetti and Brett Bielema, and even USC right now and UCLA in some ways too, like going out and getting like solid depth behind their starters, guys who would be starting at Group of 5 schools or possibly even Big Ten schools. Like Kellan Wyatt was probably going to start at Maryland this year.
Mm-hmm.
They brought him over. He's going to start. He's not a depth piece for Indiana, but still, like, that turns what you were going to have as your starter into a depth piece now, and they didn't lose that guy. So, like, as far as I'm concerned, it continues to show how much the SEC does not have a monopoly on this talent anymore. Yeah. They realize it. They know it. And guys like Kirby Smart and Shane Beamer, who were touting draft picks for all these years, are starting to look at it now and say, we're still getting draft picks, but holy crap, we don't have nearly as many draft picks on our 2-deep as we once did. Yeah. And so they're feeling the pressure because they got to go out and recruit, start freshmen, and try to get guys to come up from the lower ranks. I mean, there's a reason why Ohio State and Georgia is like fighting over like a Georgia Southern defensive tackle right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's where you have to go for some of this talent.
Yeah. I think I saw that South Carolina got that Georgia Southern defensive tackle.
Troy Pikes guy?
Yeah, Troy Pikes. Yeah.
Yeah, they were going after him too. Yeah.
But yeah, well, and to that point, to add a 9th conference game, and we've seen it in the Big Ten, it opens you up to risk. However, there's a counterpoint here. you could make the argument that if they schedule a ninth conference game, it actually might protect them. Because one of the trends, right, if you look at the 3 teams that were 9-3, one of the things that you noticed is that their out of conference games sucked. And like the only marquee Power 5 game that was scheduled, I think, out of all those schools, South Carolina had Clemson, right? So that was a win. Alabama had Wisconsin. Ultimately didn't matter. No offense to Wisconsin fans. And then Ole Miss, they had Wake Forest, I think. Not a threat. So you could make an argument that South Carolina had a big time team. But like, imagine if they replaced another, their FCS team with another good, like a good SEC team. You're probably talking about them a little differently at 9-3 rather than 10 and, rather than how we did this past year. Because even Clemson was decent. They weren't great.
Right.
So like,
well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but after Alabama lost to Oklahoma, didn't they play an FCS team like right after that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine if Alabama played, I don't know, who didn't they play last year? Imagine if they played Missouri. No, they did play Missouri. They played Missouri. They played Georgia. They played Tennessee, LSU.
What if Alabama
imagine
played
if they played Texas? Yeah, imagine if they played Texas and they won after that. They would have been in the playoffs.
Yeah.
They would have certainly made it in at 9-3 if they would have won that game coming off a loss to Oklahoma.
Yeah. The problem, and this is part of what we were, I think, railing against those SEC teams, is everybody kept saying, well, you're more than your record. And I'm like, I agree. The problem is, if you look at who those teams lost to and who they beat, it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like, and that's this whole 9-game argument. Everybody thinks that it was just because of record. And you're saying, well, just play easier games. It's like, no, that's going to make it worse for you when you do lose your games. And then you're going to cry about it again. When instead you should have just beat, like, Ole Miss, you should have beat Kentucky.
Right. And like this is the issue with Alabama fans screaming, oh, well, we're just not going to schedule anybody hard in the out of conference anymore. And it's like, that's going to be worse for you because the games you were losing were in your conference. You need to show that you can't just beat SEC teams, but you can go out of your conference. Now, unfortunately for Alabama, which I'm not crying foul for them at all. I do not care, good for them. For this to be against them. But Wisconsin was no good last year. They went 5-7. So their win against Wisconsin at Wisconsin really kind of nullified things for them. But imagine if they had done what Texas did and beaten Michigan early in the year, who was considered a top 10 team. They'd have been vaulted up, and that would have helped them even more. But unfortunately for them, that didn't happen because Wisconsin wasn't as good of a team. They were talking about like, oh, we just need to schedule better or worse non-conference teams. And it's like, no, that actually won't help you when you lose 24-3 to Oklahoma, who's 6-6 and loses to Navy in their bowl game. Or Army. Yep. Was it Navy or Army? One of the two. But yeah, so good comment here by AJ. Says it's a new world. The SEC is weeping because the playing field is even. Some of it's not even just even. It's just the Big Ten is better. I agree with you, AJ. It's a good comment. I'm just saying, like, yes, things are even, but also the Big Ten has better coaches and is better at developing their players. And so now you are giving a more even playing field for not necessarily getting talent, but not letting the SEC stockpile that talent. Alabama doesn't have 27 first rounders on a team anymore. It just doesn't happen because these guys go to schools and expect to want to play right away. And with how much you have to pay a freshman, you expect that freshman to contribute right away. There's a reason why Jeremiah Smith started playing at Ohio State right away. Yes, he was good enough, but also he's making like $4 million. You don't let that sit on the bench. There's a reason why DeCory Moore is going to play this season. You don't let $2 million, $3 million private jet rides sit on the bench. Bryce Underwood. There's a reason why he's going to play. I keep hearing people say, oh, maybe Mikey Keene will start the season. Mikey Keene's not making $4 million this year. You don't pay a dude $4 million and put him on your bench. Maybe at the start of the season, but not for the entire season. Just doesn't happen. Like, So
I feel
yeah.
like I just got called out for that because I was
No,
that
no,
guy
no, no,
saying Mikey Keaton. No, okay.
no, no,
I
no,
know.
no, no.
I've changed my tune on that.
And you said it. You said you thought Mikey Keene was going to be the guy, and Bryce Underwood would eventually take over, or it would be a 2 QB system with Bryce Underwood once things started picking up. And that was more my point than anything. Is like Bryce Underwood's going to get in the game. They're not just going to let him sit
Yeah.
on the bench the
Yeah.
entire
Yeah. Yeah.
season. I held true to I think he's going to start. But even if he doesn't start, he's still going to get in the game, and they're still going to utilize him. Trick plays, whatever else, they're going to utilize him somehow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You got to.
all right, we're at an hour, and we still have one more segment to go. So Zach, buckle in. We're going to hit
Let's
a commercial
go.
break, and then we'll come back, and we will be predicting every single week with Big Noon Kickoff. We'll be right back after this. Homefield is your go-to destination for premium collegiate apparel with a passion for comfort and a flair for vintage design. Homefield brings you gear that is comfortable and stylish. With over 150 colleges to choose from, Homefield digs deep into the archives, uncovering forgotten logos, iconic mascots, and legendary moments to create one-of-a-kind apparel. Use my code TBTH for 15% off for new customers, or use my link in the description. Back here on the Big Ten Huddle. Whoops, forgot to change my graphic over. I worked really hard on this picture of Joel and Klatt, so I have to or Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson, so I have to make sure I get it up there. So Zach and I had a comment I wanted to bring up. John Jacobs says, is UCLA going to be any good this year? They got a good quarterback. I mean, Nico Iamaleava, like we were saying with Dylan Raiola, it's a tough first year. And kind of same thing with Nico. It was a tough first year, but I liked what I saw against Ohio State. He was a gamer, and he really tried really, really hard. So hopefully that just translates to development and working hard. But we'll see. And they have Tino Sinceri. I have no doubt Tino Sinceri is going to help develop Nico.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Zach, let's go through each week and let's try to pick a Big Ten game for each one. But if we really struggle finding a Big Ten game, we can look at the Big 12 or something like that. Like I already know week 3, we're going to probably be picking a Big 12 game for Big Noon Kickoff. So remember, when we're doing this, the games have to be at Big Ten schools. So like week 3, it cannot be Wisconsin at Alabama. ESPN is going to take that one, or ABC is going to take that one because it's at Alabama. The only reason why Alabama at Wisconsin last year was a big noon game was because it was at Wisconsin. So you can't look at and say, oh, Michigan at Oklahoma. Now, ESPN is going to take that one. That's probably going to be a night game for them. It's just the way things work. So week 1, Zach, I say Ohio State, Texas, but there's also a lot of speculation behind the scenes that Ross Bjork is doing everything he possibly can to get that not to be a big noon kickoff and for it to either be NBC or CBS at 3:30 or 7 o'clock. Do you think Ross Bjork gets it done, or do you think that Fox gets their way and gets Ohio State, Texas as the big noon kickoff that day?
I think it's going to be very hard to dissuade Fox to take something other than Ohio State, Texas, because if you look at the rest of the slate, it's not great. I could see Cincinnati, Nebraska, possibly, but like every other game, like Utah at UCLA is not going to be big noon kickoff.
Yeah,
because that'd be a 9 a.m. kick. That's not happening, and that's the only other game between Power 5 teams, I think, except for Ohio State, Texas. So
yeah,
I would pick Ohio State, Texas, but I wonder if they will force Fox to move to a primetime spot.
I think that they're going to work out a deal to where it's like, don't let the final 6 games of our season all be noon games. And I think that'll probably be what happens for Ohio State. But I don't think Fox there's no way Fox is giving this up. First week of the season, big noon. They're not giving this up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm with you. I think Ohio State's probably going to try and leverage it somehow. But yeah. All right, Ohio State, Texas, week 1. Week 2, like I said, Michigan and Oklahoma can't be it. It could be Iowa State, Illinois, Duke cannot be it because it's at Duke. An interesting one is Oregon and Oklahoma State, though. Yeah. I think it's probably in between Oregon and Oklahoma State and Iowa State. What are your thoughts there?
I would lean Iowa State for two reasons. One, it's a rivalry, and two, again, if you're at Oregon, because it's a home game with Oregon, that's a 9 a.m. kick, and I think they want to try to avoid those.
Yeah. I think you're right. I could go either way on those two, but since you say Iowa State, I'll go with that one. So, all right, week 3, not really a whole lot going on here. Wisconsin at Alabama, but that is at Alabama, so that's a ESPN game. Minnesota at Cal, that would be another ESPN game because it's at Cal, and there's really nothing else here. There are 2 conference games, Purdue versus USC and Oregon versus Northwestern. However, I think this one will probably go to the Big 12. What was the Big 12 game you said?
I think it'll be the backyard brawl, Pitt at West Virginia.
That makes sense. So, Philip says NIU, Maryland, can NIU get a week 2 upset? I don't think they would be celebrating this. I mean, they'll obviously celebrate if they get it, but I don't think they're going to celebrate that one as much as they would the Notre Dame one.
Mm-hmm.
But no, they can't get it because Maryland doesn't lose in September. Come on, Philip. You know this. Michael Locksley does not lose in September. All right. Week 4. Indiana and Illinois is very interesting, but we also have a ton more conference games here. We have Nebraska, Michigan, Purdue is going to Notre Dame, but that one's going to be NBC because of Notre Dame's little agreement. Wisconsin and Maryland. I don't know why I listed that one. Thinking it would be. Oh, that was the one I was looking at was Nebraska, Michigan, which I just said. So I actually think this one is probably going to be Indiana, Illinois, and I think Nebraska, Michigan probably goes to CBS. Do you agree?
My only hesitation. So I actually have Michigan at Nebraska. I just wonder if Fox picks the bigger brands.
Yeah. But who does CBS go for? Like CBS does have to have some kind of power here, though, don't they?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
Yeah. It seems like CBS gets Michigan and Nebraska a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, am I crazy to think that?
No. I think you could see. I think they get either one of those. Yeah. So I think I think you're on the right track either way.
I think as long as Illinois beats Duke, we could have a ranked matchup between. Well, Nebraska and Illinois last year, that wasn't Big Noon. What was the Big Noon game that time?
Oh gosh.
Week 4. That was a couple weeks after Nebraska, Colorado. I'm trying to remember what the Big Noon was then. So, but yeah, that was a night game on NBC. I remember that one. So,
yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple other options here. Michigan State and USC. That one seems primed to be a night game because it's at USC. But yeah, so I would guess. I'll go with you. I'll guess Nebraska, Michigan, just because of the brands, but it would not surprise me at all if CBS takes that one.
Yeah, no, I think that's good.
Yeah,
I think it's good.
Philip, you're right. Illinois, Nebraska. That was such a good game. That was one of my favorite games to watch last season.
That was a good game.
Yeah, I need to take notes this year and do like a best games of the year list or something like that
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the year. So, all right, week 5 here, Zach. Interesting matchup. Ohio State at Washington. However, that won't be a Big Noon. They're not going to do that to Washington and make them play at 9 a.m. So some other options here. Illinois is going to be at home against USC. If they go Nebraska, Michigan, they could go to Illinois, that next one, if Illinois beats Indiana. However, Iowa is also playing Indiana that day, and it's at Iowa. So, that would just be an hour ahead. Doesn't really look like anything else there. Oregon, Penn State.
Or I was going to say Oregon, Penn State.
Yeah.
I think that's the one.
You don't think that would be CBS? I mean, Jed Fish gets his way.
I think Jed Fish is going to get the nighttime game. I think that's going to be prime time.
Well, but you see what I'm saying, though. Jed Fish was saying no West Coast team should be playing noon.
Oh, I see.
East Coast because the time change is just too much.
Yeah, if Jed Fish gets his way, I think that's a possibility, but I'm not putting too much stock in that yet.
Okay.
I think Oregon Penn State's such a marquee matchup that I think that is I think Fox is able to get it.
Yeah. I think you end up with Oregon, Penn State, big noon kickoff, Ohio State, Washington, NBC, and then you might get a double dose of Illinois on CBS with Illinois versus USC, or a double dose of Iowa, or a double dose of Indiana with Iowa
With
versus
Iowa.
Indiana on CBS.
Yeah, I think that's really possible.
Looking forward to week 5.
Mm-hmm.
That's gonna be a great week. All
Yeah.
right. Zach, week 6. I've started off every single time with my thoughts on games that could be. What are some games you think it could be in week 6?
I think Minnesota Ohio State would be my front runner. I'm not actually. I think week 6 is a pretty weak slate. Like Michigan, Wisconsin could be one. I think, but I think outside of that, there's not a lot of compelling matchups. At least this far out, right? It could change, but right now, I think Wisconsin, Michigan might be like my CBS game. I think Ohio State, Minnesota would be my big noon. And like maybe Nebraska, Michigan State is your night game, or Penn State at UCLA might be my night game.
Now, I might be getting this backward, but I think I've heard the media say that Michigan is way better for the media than Ohio State is. Like Ohio State's just not set up very well for their broadcasting and stuff like that. I mean, you've seen the shots when they look up at the
Yeah.
broadcast. There's like
It's terrible.
ceiling tiles missing. Like it's kind of embarrassing for Ohio State. I think honestly they go to Wisconsin, Michigan in that one, just purely because Joe Klatt and Gus Johnson would rather be at Michigan than at
That's
Ohio
fair.
State. They're
That's a
already going
good
to be at
point.
Ohio State once so far with Texas. They haven't been to at Michigan yet.
Yeah. Well, and it's possible that Wisconsin is at least 3-1 at that point. Although that where it really
Please let them
gets
be 4-0 and ranked.
yeah, where it really gets dicey is if Wisconsin's like 1-3 because they've lost to Maryland and maybe even to Mid Tennessee State, and it's like the wheels are falling off. Then I think it becomes really difficult to justify that.
I
But
can't see that happening. I can't see them being 1-3, 2-2 maybe. I can't do that to Luke Fickle. I can't even imagine that. All right. Darn you for putting terrible thoughts in my brain. Let's look at
that's what I'm here for, I think.
all right,
So,
week 7, we have actually this is 2 really good ones. Illinois and Ohio State, Indiana, but this is at Oregon, so that won't happen. That probably be a night game or a 3:30 game, I would think. Iowa, Wisconsin. Now that's a rivalry game. I think, Wisconsin, like we just said, they're probably not going to have a good enough record to really justify doing that, but that is kind of a sleeper possibility there. Michigan, USC, but again, that game is out west, so that's probably, that seems to be locked for a CBS game, I would think. And then am I missing any other ones here? I think those are probably the big candidates. I'm going to go with Illinois, Ohio State. What do you think?
yeah, that's what I have.
Yeah. As long as Illinois, as long as they don't have 3 losses at this time or anything like that, which I can't imagine they would. I know like USC, Indiana, and Duke are going to be, not all of them are tough games. Like Duke shouldn't be a tough game, but that's still a losable game. But I don't
because it's on the road. Because it's on the road.
It would not be a losable game if it was at home.
Yeah.
Just you never know that early in the season going on the road. But Illinois should be fine. So I can't see them having any more than 2 losses at most at that time. And I don't even think I have 2 losses.
Yeah.
So, all right, week 8. What are your games to highlight here? Week 8, Zach.
So I actually do not have a Big Ten game as my top pick.
Oh.
But I could see Penn State, Iowa being one. I could see Washington. Well, I'd say I could see Washington, Michigan. I think that
last year. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that could be one. Nebraska, Minnesota could be one. Like, there's a lot of good matchups, but there is a game in the Big 12 that I think might take precedence, and that is the rivalry between maybe 2 future Big Ten teams in Utah at BYU.
I just have to point this out really fast. Philip says 6-0 Illinois versus 5-0 Ohio State. PK says 5-0 Indiana versus 5-0 Oregon.
One of those is definitely not happening.
I love that. I love the confidence that our Illinois and Indiana fans have. I love it. Okay, sorry. What was the game you said? The rivalry game in the Big 12?
Utah at BYU.
Utah at BYU. Yeah, I mean that's going to be a tough, especially with BYU supposed to be good this year. I think they were 18th and Andy Staples top 25. I mean, as long as they're still good again, I can see that happening. So, all right, well, let's choose a Big Ten game just for the fun of it, but knowing that there's a strong possibility it could go to the Big 12.
I'll say Michigan, Washington.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. I think Penn State and Iowa is one as well, but but they also passed up on that one last time they played, and it was at Happy Valley. And was that the whiteout?
No, that was Washington.
No, not last year. 2 years ago.
Oh, 2 years ago
when Penn State beat them like 31-0.
It might have been.
Yeah,
it might have
been. Yeah, but I think that's probably the only. I mean, Ohio State, Wisconsin. If Wisconsin's doing well, but unfortunately, I just don't think they will.
I think that's an NBC game.
Yeah.
Camp Randall at night.
It was 2 years ago. Yeah, when Kyle McCord went there. Yeah, you're right. All right. Well, I don't know if that was NBC at that time, but it was a night game. All right, week 9. Illinois does travel to Washington. However, similar thing. Don't think they're going to put a night or a game out on the West Coast at night or at noon like that. I think it will be at night. Michigan State and Michigan is a strong possibility. You also have UCLA traveling to Indiana. That could be a sleeper pick there, depending on how those 2 seasons are going. And then Wisconsin traveling to Oregon after giving them a very good game next year. But I think I got to go with Michigan State in this one, Zach.
That's what I have.
Yeah. So, Pit Snipe Pusker says, "Hey JR, Mr. Zack, I'm tired. It's okay, Pit Snipe Pusker. We just appreciate you being here. So, you know us. We're gonna probably go over, so you can." Bank on being able to be tardy.
Hey, we only got 5 more weeks. Let's keep going. All
right. Well, let's Mr. Keep Going. Give us your games for week 10.
I feel like it starts and ends with Ohio State, Penn State. Like I don't think that's escaping Big Noon Kickoff.
Has there been a year that it hasn't been Big Noon Kickoff?
There have been a couple years when ESPN had the rights that ESPN had it as a night game.
But how long ago was that?
I think 2021 was the last time that happened.
So Big Noon Kickoff's pretty much been a thing since 22, 21?
Yeah, 2022, 2023, 2024 has all been Big Noon Kickoff.
Okay, yeah. So, well, let's keep the tradition going. Ohio State and Penn State. Really, it's kind of crazy we've not had Ohio State more. That's just kind of a testament to all the good games.
There's some good matchups.
Yeah, but I do think you're right though. I think that Ohio State Minnesota we might have missed on, but that one might be CPS. Oh well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Week 11. What are your thoughts?
I have Indiana at Penn State.
As I say, get a little Penn State special back to back, or do they let that one go and let Penn State have their whiteout against Indiana?
Oh, that's a good. And I'll tell you, there's another game on there that's intriguing. Would be Iowa, Oregon.
That's what I was gonna say. Do they go Iowa, Oregon instead, and Penn State gets? Because like I don't really see another option here for Penn State to have like a good whiteout this season. And I know that's not Fox's like prerogative, but I just think that's like what Penn State would fight for. Like they don't want to have another whiteout against, Iowa, UCLA, Michigan State. Like
it would be
those are away games. I apologize. They don't want to have another whiteout against Northwestern. Nebraska. I mean, Nebraska wouldn't be bad. But.
I know we picked Oregon at Penn State to be Big Noon. but I could see them making like getting a deal where Oregon is actually the whiteout game.
So if they did that, what other game?
So
Oh,
then they,
Illinois, USC, or Iowa, Indiana.
yeah,
That would be possible.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a good thought. All right, let's go Indiana, Penn State. We'll let them figure out what what they're gonna do with the wideout. Week
sounds good.
12. Week 12. Iowa goes to USC. Michigan State goes to Penn State. Minnesota heads to Oregon, and Ohio State hosts UCLA. Really, not a whole lot of options on this one. You get Wisconsin going to Indiana, but again,
Yeah,
Wisconsin probably going to be struggling at that time. I don't think there's going to be enough there for that. But I do think they would want to go to Indiana at some point if Indiana's having another really good season again.
yeah.
Um,
I I think I would almost go either Indiana, Wisconsin, or Ohio State, UCLA. I think those are the two that I would pick.
Indiana, Wisconsin, or Ohio State, UCLA. Yeah, I think. I mean, it's late in the season. They're probably going to go Ohio State, UCLA again.
Yeah.
So, what do you guys think in the chat? Philip says whiteout energy, JR. Dude,
Yeah.
I love the whiteout. I love the whiteout. I think that
Yeah.
is one of the coolest traditions, and it doesn't get mentioned
Yeah.
enough with traditions. People would be like, "Slap
Yeah.
the sign,
It
Notre
is.
Dame." It's like,
It is
do you not think
incredible.
it's amazing that everybody just wears white and then they scream their faces off for 4 hours? Like,
Yeah.
to me, that's cooler than tapping a sign. Sorry, Notre Dame.
It's incredible. I've been to one, and actually, it was 2012 when Ohio State was there. My students actually pitched in to get me and my wife tickets to the game, and it was awesome.
Yeah,
It was
that's
really
a
fun.
substantial ticket.
Yeah, yeah. It was nosebleeds,
Yeah, well, you still got to
but
experience
yeah, it was amazing. A lot of
So,
people chipped in. So
what's Pitt Snipe Husker say? It says, "Come on, JR, share my Taylor Llewellyn Michigan love. Come on, I gotta be honest. I can't stand Taylor Llewellyn. I think
yeah,
he is one of
he's a punk.
the I I have I shouldn't say that.
I probably
Not
shouldn't
a
have said it too.
fan of not a fan of Taylor Llewellyn. So sorry, Pitt Snipe Husker. I can't share that. Now the other guy. What's the other guy's name? Bustin' with the boys or Bustin' with the boys? The
Yeah.
Nebraska guy. Can't remember his name. I like that guy though. That guy's cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's because we didn't pick Michigan, Nebraska, but no, we did pick Michigan, Nebraska that one. So, all right, week 13. Zach got some options here. We have Nebraska, Penn State, possibly going to Penn State. We have Oregon and USC. That's a West Coast game, though. I don't think that one would happen. And Wisconsin, Illinois. Yeah, this one's pretty bare. I wouldn't be surprised if this is another Big 12 one. You got any Big 12 games from Week 13, Zach?
Oh, let me look it up here. It's funny. I think
because I don't think we've given a big noon to Maryland yet. It wouldn't surprise me if Michigan is doing really well. You know, one or two losses if they throw the game to Maryland, Michigan, but
I could see. I mean, it'd be Mountain Time, but Colorado, Arizona State is a possibility.
They've done that before, though.
Yeah,
they've done Colorado.
Cincinnati at BYU at Cincinnati is another one. But I actually, if Arizona State's doing well, I think Arizona State at Colorado would be my pick.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, and Joel Klatt's going to go to at least one Colorado game.
Yeah.
For Big Noon. All right. Well, I think that would make sense. For sake of the Big Ten, though, I think we should at least select one game out of the Big Ten to possibly be that. I think you're probably going to see them go to Nebraska, Penn State if that's the case.
Yep. Yeah.
Are they just going to go big noon for every single home game for Penn State?
It's possible. Penn State's got a really good home schedule this year, I think.
Yeah, and even the teams they play that aren't like necessarily supposed to be top contenders, they're still like good, like high value teams. Like their home game against Oregon, really the only home game they have that's not a good team or like a high value fan base is Northwestern.
Yeah.
That's crazy. All right, and then final game. I don't think there's any debate. Ohio State, Michigan is where they're going to go.
I think there could be a high premium for Maryland, Michigan State. I'm just saying.
Well, how much you want to bet on that?
0. But just because I don't
will
bet.
gladly take that bet.
Yeah. No.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He's not a betting man.
Yeah,
I get
no,
it.
yeah. No. It's very clearly Ohio State, Michigan.
Yeah, I mean they literally gone every single year that the big noon kickoff has existed.
Yeah. I'll be honest though, I actually think I'd prefer that. I'd prefer a 3:30 kick for that game.
So you're saying to heck with tradition? Or just this year, or you're saying overall you would rather see Ohio State?
I like and I mean this is another conversation for another day. I think out of all the broadcast qualities, I think CBS is the best.
Yeah, I like CBS's broadcast the best, even though Gary Danielson's still a little bit of a honk for the SEC. He does a good job. So, but you like Gary Danielson a lot. You're a big fan of him.
I wouldn't say I'm a big fan. I appreciate him. He reminds me of fond memories.
Never called him an SEC honk on this show, though, Zach.
Not on this show, no. In the comfort of my own living room.
All right. Philip says, "Isn't Michigan at Northwestern in Wrigley
most likely
year? They have 2 of them. One of them is Michigan. Excuse me, I forget who the other one is though. Is it Michigan? It's not Minnesota. It's not Oregon. It might be Purdue. That would be weird. So, all right, Zach. I think we did our job here. Any final thoughts on the big noon kickoff?
I appreciate big noon kickoff. I just wish it wasn't at noon.
Same. Does 4 games for Ohio State seem like enough?
I hope it is.
Because that would be 3 home games for Ohio State.
Yeah.
Which would leave Minnesota and Rutgers open to be non-big noon kickoff games. But that Minnesota game also has a high likelihood of being a big noon kickoff instead of Wisconsin, Michigan.
I could also see, week 3 we talked about how it's a week slate. Week 3 a year ago, it was Ohio State hosting Marshall. I could see where you have an Ohio State, Ohio, or a Michigan, Central Michigan, where it's just meant to highlight one of the big dogs in the Big Ten.
Yeah, that would make sense. I could see Ohio State, Ohio. I don't think they'd go Ohio State Grambling over Iowa State.
No, that's
But I could see him going for Ohio State, Ohio.
Yeah.
Label it as like an Ohio matchup and Battle of Ohio, yada yada, stuff like that. So.
Yeah. If Ohio wants to spring the upset, there's no upset happening.
Yeah. Can Ohio pull an NIU?
No.
So, Joe says Gus Johnson is a true professional. Him and Jason Benetti are the best play-by-play guys right now. I like Jason Benetti a lot. I like Gus Johnson's energy, but I did have some critiques of him last year. Gus Johnson also gets stuff wrong sometimes. That kind of annoys me, but the energy makes up for it for me. I like probably Jason Benetti better, but I like Gus Johnson too.
I feel like I still like Gus. I don't think he has been as good as he used to be.
Much better in big games.
Yeah. I think Joel Klatt makes up for a lot of Gus's. Yeah, I just feel like Gus hasn't been as sharp over the past several years. And I love
Gus's. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I love Gus and Joel. I used to say that they are on my show, the show before I came here, before I was tampered with.
Hey, don't give me a show cause.
Yeah.
Calm down.
But when on my previous show, I used to say Gus and Joel were the best, and I still think they're a really good team. But I think Joel carries Gus a little bit more than he used to.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think, I don't know. This is probably a longer conversation, but I think Joel got too invested in like some of the Michigan, Ohio State like cheating stuff, and that kind of soured it. It's one of the reasons why we don't really talk that stuff on here as much.
Yeah.
Because the one time we say anything about it and we have an opinion, everybody's like, "Oh, Ohio State homers, you guys are terrible," and it's like we're just trying to be fair. Like if we were gonna do a segment on that tonight,
Mm-hmm.
my main point would be, how does Ward Manuel still have a job? It wouldn't be anything about Jim Harbaugh. It wouldn't be anything about like they deserve punishment. It would be, how in the world does Ward Manuel still have a job?
There's I think that's the one thing that we do have to allude to is at this point, regardless of Signgate, the amount of smoke now that is coming out of the program, it's very concerning. And also, the NCAA should have done something 2 years ago, and they didn't. So, again, the NCAA stinks.
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, if I'm Michigan, it's like nobody wants Ward Manuel. Like it's not like Ward Manuel is like good at his job in other ways. Like
Right?
there's so
He's
much criticism for him outside of this, and this would be such an easy thing to be like, you can't run a football program that doesn't have dudes getting fired for drunk driving and like all this stuff.
It's a mess. It's a mess.
So, and I think I'm preaching to the choir there with Michigan fans by saying that. I mean, maybe I'm going to get a comment here from Michigan fans saying I'm wrong and being unfair, but to my knowledge, they all hate Ward Manuel. So, yeah. All right, Zach, good show. Good show. Thank you everybody for being in the chat today. Had a very lively chat. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get to it as much during the big new kickoff segment, but I was trying to peek over there every now and then, and you guys had some really good comments. AJ, good comments from AJ today. Said if IU is in position to go to the Big Ten championship, would Big Noon go to IU versus Purdue? This could be an aggressive call. I don't think so, just because Ohio State and Michigan gets all those eyeballs every single year. I mean, it's like it's either the most or the second most watched game in college football every single year, according to TV ratings. So unfortunately, I don't think they would go, but maybe. I don't know. Maybe something happens and they have a change of heart. Be cool.
Yeah. Well, especially if someone else got Ohio State, Michigan. Which maybe if Big Noon gets Ohio State, Texas, there is a possibility where.
Yeah, but it's not at Ohio State this year. That would be Ohio State's whole angle of, we give you Big Noon for
that's
Texas,
fair.
But we don't give you Penn State for Big Noon.
That's fair. You know? That's very fair.
So, like, I could see them giving Texas to Big Noon and saying, guarantee us you don't take Minnesota and Rutgers, because Minnesota is actually prime candidate there for a night game, recruiting weekend and everything. They need that to not be Big Noon. So I could see them doing that. But all right, Zach, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Nope. Good day's work.
Good day's work. Don't get a show cause, Zach. We appreciate you being here. Everybody, be safe out there. Don't get any show causes. Don't tamper. Don't do anything like that. Okay? Just if recruiting is closed, just don't be recruiting. Okay? Have a good time, everybody. We'll see you next time.